gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's October the 16th, 2023. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined once again by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day, presented this morning by GameTime.co, your headquarters for all of your ticket purchases for any event you might choose to attend, whether it be Hurricane football, Dolphins, Panthers, Heat, even theater all over the country, concerts. GameTime.co has the best app in the industry, the best website for shopping for tickets, last-minute tickets, and we'll talk a little bit more about Game Time later in the show, but you definitely want to check them out and keep them in mind if you ever need tickets to any event. Matt, there might be a few tickets available for an event that I know that's going to take place on Saturday night at 8 o'clock at Hard Rock Stadium when the Clemson Tigers come to play the Miami Hurricanes, because all I've been hearing on my travels back from Chapel Hill yesterday, since I got home, text messages, emails, everybody wants to jump off the ledge. Everybody is apoplectic about how over a 7-day period this Miami Hurricane football season has seemingly fallen apart with now back-to-back losses to Georgia Tech, which obviously shouldn't have been a loss, and to North Carolina, which was an earned loss by the Hurricanes on Saturday night in just a horrific third quarter, turning the ball over, not adjusting very well to what North Carolina was doing offensively. And before they knew it, they were basically out of the game after going in at halftime with a 3-point lead. So we'll unpack all of that here on the show. And I want to say a few things. When you turn the ball over now 9 times in a week, in two games over a week, you're probably not winning those games. Now, Miami was significantly better than Georgia Tech and would have overcome all of the mistakes that they made in that game. Saturday night primetime game on national TV under the lights in the home stadium of a very good football team. You probably are not going to win that game unless you play. I mean, nobody plays perfect, but you would have to play a near perfect brand of football to come out of a game like that victorious, unless the other team just totally played horrendously, which North Carolina did not. I thought North Carolina played very, very well, as you probably would have expected them to. So Miami, with all of its mistakes, essentially took itself out of the game. And, Matt, I want to focus on one thing because I personally, turnovers happen. Matt Lee snapping a ball wide left to Tyler Van Dyke was a fluke, okay? We haven't seen that in the first half of the season. Not even one time. That was a fluke. Tyler wasn't ready for it. He wasn't able to cover it. That comes under the category of stuff just happens sometimes that you got to be able to overcome. Tyler Van Dyke, who otherwise graded phenomenally yet again, who threw for almost 400 yards in this game, had one horrendous pass that got intercepted. Other than that, he played pretty darn well, especially when you consider that he is playing with the remnants of torn ligaments in 3 of his fingers from that injury he suffered in training camp before the start of the season. Every time he gets hit, it hurts. It's an issue. You've probably noticed a change in his throwing motion, and that is the reason why. Okay, and he otherwise played pretty well, but he made one really bad decision, and that was an interception. Unfortunately, they came on back-to-back series in the third quarter of the game, just as North Carolina was making its surge. So where was the bigger problem? Was it in the mistakes that were being made by the offense? Or was it the fact that North Carolina was able to put a surge together behind what I think you, Matt, called an insane hurry up offense. And it was, and I want to talk about it now because you went in the lab yesterday. You spent an enormous amount of time analyzing that one aspect of the game, what North Carolina did to adjust to what Miami was doing defensively in the first half, which was very effective. They were getting to Drake May. They were disrupting North Carolina's offense. The Miami defense, I felt, well, I'm not going to use the word dominant because they didn't pitch a shutout, but they were controlling the football game in the first half for the most part when they weren't shooting themselves in the foot. So North Carolina, and give them great credit. I take no, I'm not embarrassed to give somebody credit when they deserve it. Made the adjustment, and they started speeding up their offense. And what that did was it kept Miami from getting its play calls organized to come after Drake May, and created a lot of disarray on the Miami side of the ball because they were not prepared for it. Astonishingly, were not prepared for it. And, you know, everybody always looks to point fingers at coaches. That was the coaching failure of this ball game. We know what it was against Georgia Tech. In this game, the massive coaching failure was not being better prepared for North Carolina's hurry-up offense. So, Matt, I'm going to turn this thing over to you. I know I've talked for 6 minutes. I apologize. I know you're going to go at least 10 after all the work you did yesterday, and I'm going to just sit back and listen. But talk to us about, A, what North Carolina showed before this game that Miami should have taken note of and done a better job of preparing for in their week of work for this North Carolina game. B, the problems that North Carolina was able to create by increasing that pace of their offensive game and the amount of time that they were taking in between plays, how much it shrunk. I want you to talk to us about that. And then, of course, obviously, the effect of it, which was massive. And North Carolina put up just insane numbers in the second half, almost 300 yards of offense in the second half of that football game after also having a very good second quarter. So, Matt, I think that, you know, this week, Lance Guidry failed because he was not ready for that.
I'm as tired talking about Miami's failures as probably people are listening to our show. I mean, I had to drown my sorrows over a chicken vodka parmesan at Anthony's Runway 84 on Sunday just to wallow in my sorrow. And you know, I didn't call it an insane offense. You said I called it an insane offense. You know,
you had a great term for it.
I called it hyperspeed because I'm a
hyperspeed. Okay.
Yeah, I call it hyperspeed because I'm a Trekkie. Sorry to those who thought I was a cool person. I'm a Trekkie.
But didn't you originally come up with a phrase that involved the word insane hurry up offense or something like that?
Maybe I said it at some point, but it all runs together.
You had some phrase like that you came up with.
I mean, look, you know, I don't use the word insane anymore because insane would be a defensive coach losing his you-know-what, running onto the field screaming in the middle of a game. That would be insane. So, I mean, you know, I'm not going to downplay the word insane anymore because that's just.
And before that happened, I got to tell you, there were a lot of people.
I've never seen that happen in my life, ever.
I haven't either, but there were a lot of people in Kenan Stadium as I was walking around before the game. I talked enormous number of Canes fans up there, and a lot of them watch our show every morning. I want to give a shout out to all you guys that I met this weekend. It was my honor and pleasure to meet you guys, and you know, thank you so much for your support of CaneSport and our show. But in unison, what I heard from all of these millions of viewers out there that wake up to Good Morning CaneSport was Matt Shodell is insane. Okay. Yep. I heard that over and over again.
Yep.
And then Lance Guidry stepped up and took the mantle from you.
He made me look normal. It was great. Thank you to Lance Guidry. So anyway, so yes, look, I am a little bit crazy. There's no doubt about it. But, you know, getting back to what we were talking about, which I think was football, if I remember correctly, the game before this that North Carolina played was against Syracuse. And obviously I broke down the Syracuse game as part of my North Carolina series, you know, because heading into North Carolina, that was actually a game that mattered to Miami. Now it looks like, the ACC is probably out of reach. It's back to let's just focus on Miami and not the opponents so much, right? That's sort of going to be the underlying thread for the rest of the year, because all the goals that they had worked so hard for this offseason are really pretty much off the table at this point. It's just going to be a matter of play hard, get better, hopefully upset a Clemson, hopefully upset a Florida State, hopefully beat the teams you should beat, hopefully just look better, have some younger guys maybe get some more time now. Like I talked about last year, I have no problem with getting younger guys extra reps now and just seeing what they can do, because you need to build this team into a 10-win team next year. That's the Matt Shodell trajectory. And beyond that, the playoffs. You need to get those guys ready, because those are the guys who are going to carry this program. The guys you got in the transfer portal that are starting aren't championship level. I mean, that's fairly obvious at this point. Even Jaden Davis, you saw him just get lit up on 2 plays. He's not a great cover corner. They knew that at Oklahoma, but the way that Lance Guidry had used him prior to this was really sort of masking some of his deficiencies as a cover corner and really using him in blitzes and in different kinds of roles, almost as a safety sometimes, attacking the line. But these are the issues that I raised when Mario did go heavy in the transfer portal the last 2 years. Gary always goes out of focus when I talk about the transfer portal because he loses his mind. But you take 27 guys in the transfer portal and you go 5-7 one year, and now you're 0-2 in the conference start the next year. Were those 27 guys who are gone after a couple of years worth it? I don't know. If you could have filled them with younger players who maybe develop and help this team build to a championship level roster over a longer period of time, I don't know. I'm not an expert. I just pretend to be one. But as it pertains to the question here, the Syracuse game, watching that game, what you saw was the same thing that North Carolina did against Miami. So when you hear Corey Couch after the game bemoaning the fact that North Carolina's tempo offense was confusing Miami and causing all sorts of problems communication-wise for Miami, you just sort of shake your head, for those of you that had watched the North Carolina-Syracuse game, and you say, what's he talking about? They did the exact same thing to Syracuse. North Carolina literally, even though they built a 3-touchdown lead into the second half, the first series against Syracuse was as fast as you will ever see a team run its offense. And the whole first half, they did the same thing they were doing in Miami, where, against Miami, and this was North Carolina's genius in a sense, the first series of the first quarter and the first series of the second half, the third quarter, for North Carolina with the ball, they did not run a single fast play other than a 3rd and 1 where you want to hurry up and run that play before the defense really gets sad and tries to stop the run. Other than that, they were taking 30 seconds off the clock, 25 seconds off the clock, not the 12, 13, 14 seconds, because they wanted to make sure Lance Guidry wasn't dialing things up that they weren't prepared for. All it took was one series in the first quarter and one series in the third quarter for that offensive coordinator at North Carolina to say, they're not doing anything we didn't expect. And then he went right to mixing up tempo when they wanted to do tempo. And when he was a 3rd and long or a play where they thought they could take a shot, then he would call it off and say, look to the sideline. Let's make sure we're running the play we want to run at that point. So they really mixed it up. And by doing that, they prevented Lance Guidry from knowing play to play that he could even get the play call in that he wanted to get in, to switch up what the defense was doing play to play. Because there was plays, and I literally counted the first 3 quarters. I counted on my trusty stopwatch. I counted how much time there was from the player being down on the ground to the second the next snap happened. I counted those seconds on my stopwatch every single play. This is how I enjoyed my entire day on Sunday.
And it was what, like it was coming up like 12 or 13
11 seconds, 12 seconds, 14 seconds, 12 seconds.
Which is
there
amazing.
was those plays where it was 25, 26 seconds. There was very few plays that were between 15 and 25 seconds. There was almost none that I can think of right now. They were either going within 15 seconds or they were taking their time and taking 25 seconds to 30 seconds to get the snaps off. It was a clear strategy. And what that essentially did, because look, you could say, my feeling is that when Miami went in the locker room with a 3-point lead at halftime and Lance Guidry had only given up 14 points, the warning sign was there. North Carolina had just had a long touchdown drive late in the second quarter. The warning sign was there. North Carolina had over 200 yards in the first half, but only 14 points. So there were some warning signs to Lance Guidry, and Lance Guidry knows what they did against Syracuse. He knows what they were going to do in the second half, but he felt like, you know what? They only got 14 points. We're good. So he didn't do anything dramatically different. And North Carolina, by the way, didn't do anything dramatically different either in the second half. Like, it seemed like there was more pace to their offense, but that was only because in the first half there was so many holding calls. When there's a holding call, you're not rushing up to the line, right? There was 6 holding calls. I think 5 of them were in the first half. You're not rushing up to the line after a penalty or an injury or a timeout. And there was just so many of those instances in the first half versus the second half. It just seemed like the second half they were doing this insane hyper drive, hurry up offense. It was the same thing they were doing in the first half, just it appeared to be more so in the second half because of those factors. And when you factor in, when they stopped creating penalties and having injuries and that sort of thing, when you take that touchdown drive at the end of the third quarter, and at the end of the second quarter, and the entire third quarter, you add up those yards in a 20-minute span. This is in a 20-minute span. They gave up 274 yards and 28 points. Lance Guidry's defense gave up 274 yards and 28 points in 20 minutes of play. 20 minutes.
Now, let me just interject here. Here's why that happened. They were having an enormously difficult time getting their defensive signals in.
Correct. That's what I was trying to say. Thank you.
And having everybody know what the play call was and what their assignments were. Because of that difficulty, and there were several plays where Miami wasn't even lined up. You had defensive linemen still standing. They weren't in their stances. People confused, defensive backs trying to get on the same page with each other, who's supposed to cover who. There was enormous chaos and confusion on the defensive side of the football all of a sudden for Miami. And what that did was it kept them from executing the schemes that were allowing them to be successful in the first half. The blitzes stopped. They had to run a lot more base defense, and they're just not very good if they're not creating havoc, blitzing from all angles, and getting to the quarterback. The Miami defense is not good, folks. It is not good at all, and it's been exposed now on multiple occasions. Texas A&M second half. The last 3 quarters of the North Carolina game the other night. Even Temple had some success in that game in Philadelphia against Miami's defense when it was running predominantly base defense. So it was the adjustment that they made that totally changed the football game, and Miami didn't handle it well. And Matt, I love Lance Guidry's schemes when he's dialing it up and they're working. And it's not his fault. He's a first-year defensive coordinator. It is not his fault that the talent level on defense is clearly very deficient. Okay, that is not his fault. Let's not forget to mention how they got their absolute butts whooped at the line of scrimmage in this ball game, unlike they had earlier in the year. I mean, North Carolina, I think, had 280 yards rushing in this game.
Miami had 5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, ton of quarterback hurries.
That was all in the first, most of it early.
Well, but again, keep in mind, this is what Lance Guidry wanted to do. He was thinking going into the game, our problem is Drake May. We can't let Drake May be comfortable in the pocket. And our run defense is number 1 in the nation. He didn't seem to be very worried really about stopping the run. He had a linebacker constantly, or even sometimes dropping Ruben Bain and stuff like that to spy Drake May, who likes to get out of the pocket and run. And he was dialing up pressure to get to Drake May. He was not doing what he had done the prior games, which was our main objective is stop the run. And then after that, let's get after the quarterback. His objective in this game clearly was, let's just get after the quarterback. I don't think they're that good a run team. He ignored our article the week before.
270 yards rushing.
I know.
With one back, Omarion Hampton getting 197.
Correct. And I think that, you can't have it both ways. It's hard. It's hard to get after the quarterback as your first priority and then stop the run. Like, stopping the run has to be first. And Lance Guidry always said his first priority is stop the run. But in this game, it seemed clear to me that was not his first priority. His first priority, looking at North Carolina, I think he overthought things a little bit. And he underestimated how much North Carolina was running the ball. I mean, we charted it last week. We said North Carolina was running the ball with its running backs. What was it, 53% of the time versus last year there was like 32% of the time. Whatever it was a big difference from last year to this year in how much the running backs were running the ball. And they were having success running the ball. I felt that was, this was probably, I would just have to say, honestly, it was a terribly executed game by Lance Guidry. And I think part of the reason he got that crazy penalty, which I've never seen a coach ever get before, is because I think he realized that he was in, big trouble. He realized that what he had schemed up and tried to do, he couldn't run it. He didn't anticipate, my guys, I can't get a defense called in because, oh yeah, I forgot they run this hyper speed offense a lot. I don't know what he anticipated coming into the game would happen. I don't know if he thought North Carolina would outthink themselves. Like, whatever he thought North Carolina was due, because Lance Guidry's big thing is, I don't want to just think about myself. I want to think about what they're going to try to do to me and then answer that. Whatever he thought they were going to do, he was not right. This was a very, very badly called game for the Miami defense. There was one play we charted, you can look at this morning. The defense wasn't even set. They're looking to the sideline for a call when the ball's being snapped. Like, I literally put that in there. I mean, there's two players still jogging into position when the receivers are already running their routes. It was luckily just a run play that went for 8 yards, but it was emblematic of the entire night. From that one play was emblematic of the entire night in that this Miami defense was not prepared correctly. And I feel bad for the players because Gary is saying, oh, the players aren't good enough. Well, maybe they're not good enough, but they weren't given a chance to be good enough by what was dialed up by Lance Guidry in this game. And Lance Guidry was fantastic, I thought. The first 4 games, really, and the 5th game for at least 2 to 3 quarters, I thought. What he had done, I was pleasantly surprised because I had said that, there were some concerns for me about Miami's defense entering this year, and I felt like he had answered them to some extent against Texas A&M for sure, and to another extent a little bit against the Georgia Tech passing game, which was not a bad passing offense. But this, like we said before this game, this was the real test for Lance Guidry, and unfortunately he did fail the test. I'm not going to mince words. I mean, he failed the test, but he will get up. He's a smart guy. He will learn from this.
He's so likable. He's the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah.
But Matt, you raised the alarm in the offseason. I mean, I'm giving you credit here. You were the negative Nancy, and we teased you, and Lance Guidry has never done it at this level where he's being asked to do it right now. And this was a lesson yesterday, unfortunately, a hard lesson that you better be better prepared going into these games. Like, these are good coaches in the ACC. And that adjustment that North Carolina made, you can only applaud them for it because of how well it worked.
First of all, you keep calling it an adjustment. It's not that different.
But it was an adjustment.
But it's not that different than what you saw against Syracuse, Gary. Look at the Syracuse tape. It's not that
different. Every play, like almost that they were doing the way they were doing it.
The tempo was the same. Of course, they're not running the same exact plays. North Carolina will run the same looks and run different plays out of it, like every offense does. I don't know if that's the adjustment you're referring to. If you were talking about an adjustment,
what I'm talking about is they were running up to the line after a play.
Yeah, that's not an adjustment.
They had the play already called, probably.
Correct.
And they were snapping.
It goes right away. Yeah. No, they did it.
Cadence.
Did you look at the story this morning? And I literally put 2 or 3 of the Syracuse clips in there just between the plays. You can see it's the exact same thing. They just rush back the line, snap the ball.
There was no cadence. It was get lined up, boom, play starts.
Exact same. I rewatched the first half of the Syracuse game and into the third quarter of the Syracuse game for all the North Carolina possessions yesterday also, just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. It was identical in the way that they take time on some plays. Now, I would say they did a little bit less of the hurry up against Syracuse, but that was in part because they were killing Syracuse by the first drive of the third quarter. That game was over, so they didn't have to really show a lot after that. But clearly the first 2 quarters into the first couple of drives of the third quarter, the first half into the first couple of drives of the third quarter, like, it was the same thing North Carolina was doing. They would snap the ball, and I charted it in the story this morning. I charted, here were the drives against Syracuse. Here's how long they took. It's the same thing, 11 seconds, 12 seconds, 14 seconds, 12 seconds, 29 seconds, 12 seconds, 25 seconds.
Which makes
seconds. It's in the story. I literally charted Syracuse, too.
But that makes it all the more inexcusable.
Well, that's why, I don't want to pile.
I don't want ready for it.
I don't want to pile on the guy because, I mean,
it's not a matter of piling on it. It's acknowledging that they were not prepared.
It was not a good
moment for it. They did not execute it well in the game, and they lost the game because of it. A very big game for them that now has taken them out of the ACC race for all practical purposes.
To me, just as having covered football for way too long and having covered many different levels of college, pros, football, high school football, I don't understand how you watch tape from the Syracuse game and you just don't seem prepared for this exact same thing against Syracuse. And your players after the game, Corey Couch says, and I'll read the quote right here. This was the quote. Okay, this was an exact quote from Corey Couch. he said this was asked. He was actually asked about what happened in the second half in the third quarter that went wrong, because the third quarter obviously was bad. And he said there was nothing different in the third quarter. And then he said it was, quote, in general, this was now, quote, just tempo. We struggled with tempo, getting lined up, communicating. They took advantage of that. That bothers me because it's nothing new. It's not like North Carolina came in the game and shocked Miami. Then you say, okay, there's a little bit of an excuse built in. They'd never shown it before. Miami had prepared for what they'd seen. How do you prepare for something that you never expected them to do? I get that to some extent, right? But then North Carolina has to be able to do something they've never done before also, which makes it more difficult. When North Carolina's already been doing this in games, they know how to do it. They've shown they can do it effectively, and you don't prepare for that pace, that 12 seconds from the guy on the ground to the next snap happening. That's a problem. And the Syracuse game, there was even a play. Look, these coaches watch every play, right? They get every single play on their screen. There was a play against Syracuse, which is in the story this morning. North Carolina is playing Syracuse last weekend, and literally North Carolina is lined up with Drake May in shotgun. 3 Syracuse linemen are still running back to line up on defense, and they just get back and turn around when the ball is snapped. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about what North Carolina is trying to do to you, then it was a failure. I don't understand, and look, Lance Guidry will talk later today. I'm not the kind of guy who's going to.
It was massive.
Yeah, but so this is going to be interesting. I'm not the kind of guy who said to a coach, "You failed tremendously. What happened? What went wrong?" Like, that's just not how reporters act. It's not professional.
I'll be on record. I love Lance Guidry.
Yeah,
I'm going to go on record. I love Lance Guidry. He's the nicest guy in the world. We love our press conferences with him and everything else. This at North Carolina on Saturday night was a monumental, colossal failure because of what the game meant to Miami, the circumstances, and the fact that, like Matt is pointing out, they should have known they needed to be ready for that, and they were not. And North Carolina blew the game open. They exploited that and blew the game open. Otherwise, the Miami offense had really played pretty well other than the turnovers, which, by the way, is the number 7 offense in the country now. And those of you that are ready to give up on Tyler Van Dyke and blame him for everything that goes wrong, he continues to grade out amongst the top quarterbacks in the country and is playing with the remnants of 3 torn ligaments in the fingers of his throwing hand that he suffered in training camp, and he's sucking it up out there. And when he gets hit, it hurts like hell. He's out there sucking it up. He's playing at the highest level of his career. I mean, Jacoby George had a career day yesterday. Xavier Restrepo, could barely walk after the game. He was just the way they wore him out. But he's putting up in ridiculous numbers. A lot of people are saying that Tyler Van Dyke is targeting Xavier Restrepo too much, and that can be a separate debate. But he's having a great season. Jacoby George might be the most improved player on the team. Brashard Smith got a lot of reps yesterday. He stepped up and was making plays. Well, I remember one amazing catch over the middle. Josh Horton made a great play on a 4th down and was rewarded by Kevin Beard and Shannon Dawson with a lot more reps in the second half of that game yesterday because of the big play that he made. You are seeing guys across the board offensively at the receiver position really stepping up here, and mad kudos to Kevin Beard, who clearly is doing a very good job of coaching those guys. But Matt, another area, and this is on the offensive side of the ball, that people are noticing is they're not using the tight ends at all. Which is kind of bizarre because they've recruited some really good ones. Riley Williams looks like he could be an elite tight end. Elijah Arroyo was back. Looked in pregame like he was pretty much full speed. He got no targets, I don't think, the entire game. So that's something that we could talk about as the week goes on. Do they need to get the tight end more involved? But that all said, the Miami offense is functioning at an extremely high level this season.
Yeah. The Shannon Dawson.
So this was a big deal.
Yeah. Shannon Dawson,
and that's
not...
yeah,
go ahead. Are you speaking or am I speaking?
No, I didn't. I stopped. I didn't.
Oh, I was just going to say, Shannon Dawson.
No, you're speaking. We're having a little bit of a delay here.
Oh, well, I was going to say Shannon Dawson is not a guy who uses the tight ends heavily in the passing game. He hasn't in the past. but he hasn't had tight ends like this in the past either. And I guess they're trying to get Riley Williams a little bit involved, but Cam McCormick's not a receiving tight end. Cam McCormick actually graded out really badly this past weekend. You guys can look at that story from yesterday. But, I don't know if Elijah Arroyo would change things around. I mean, do you want Elijah Arroyo targeted in the passing game when passes can go to Jacoby George, Brashard Smith, Isaiah Horton, Xavier Restrepo, whoever, Colby, I don't remember who I forgot now, Colby Young, whoever. Like, they have
no problem putting it out at all.
They have 5 or 6 wide receivers that I think are really, really good. And the tight ends right now, they're better served being blocking tight ends or not even being on the field if you want to go 4 wide. If you're going 4 wide, I don't need a tight end in the slot right now. You got Brashard Smith, Xavier Restrepo, and Ray Joseph. I'll take 2 of those guys in the slot right now. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. I don't know that, I know Shannon Dawson against Georgia Tech, obviously they struggled a lot. To me, there was some personnel, more of a personnel thing. I mean, look, the play calling was not good in that Georgia Tech game, okay? But there's no reason if you call a run play against Georgia Tech, you can't gain 5 yards, every single time. There's no reason if you call a pass play, even if it's a short pass against Georgia Tech, you can't get 10 yards out of that play, 5 to 10 yards. And get a lot of points. That's what other teams have done to Georgia Tech. And I understand it was a conservative game plan, and it obviously backfired, even though they should have won the game at the end against Georgia Tech. But, Shannon Dawson, I don't think he's had that many real problems in terms of how he's calling plays and his offense in general. I wouldn't say, he needs to use the tight end like you were saying. I think his offense is fine. I just think the execution is lacking. I mean, Tyler Van Dyke just throws an interception when he just clearly doesn't see a guy dropping right into his passing lane. I think he does look at Xavier too often. There's plays where other receivers, you see him on tape are wide open, and he's trying to force a ball when there's 3 guys along Xavier Restrepo it was a 3rd down or a 4th down. Like, I don't understand that. Other than the fact that I know Tyler, when he sees a defense he's not sure about, and he knows where Xavier's going to be, I get it, because he knows Xavier's his roommate. They study film together all the time. I get it that, okay, I know at least he's going to be there in 2.5 seconds, and I'll just throw the ball to where he's going to be, no matter who else is going to be there. Like, I see Tyler doing that, right? He doesn't look at other reads. If he's not quite sure what the defense is, that's when you see him go to Xavier every single time, because Xavier gets open fairly quickly, and he runs very precise routes. There's no, he's going to be off by even an inch, whereas other guys aren't quite as precise sometimes. But you just can't target a guy 15 to 20 times a game and expect to have consistent success that way. There will be somebody who can cover Xavier at some point, whether it's one great nickel or whether it's an effort by a defense coordinator to take Xavier in the middle of the field out of play for Tyler. And I'm curious because that hasn't happened yet, but there will be a team, probably Clemson, that basically says, you're not going to throw to Xavier today. Let's see what else you can do. And Clemson has a top 10 defense in almost all the categories. So just as this was a big test for Shannon Dawson, probably one of the 2 or 3 biggest he'll have all year, and he obviously, as we spoke about, it did not go well. And he will be asked, obviously, about what happened. I'm just saying I don't like asking nasty questions. At press conferences, you ask him different ways. What could have happened better? What do you wish would have happened differently on this play or that play? How did so-and-so perform? Blah, 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 blah. You're not going to say, it was terrible. What went wrong? There was a guy who used to do that. He's no longer covering sports. But anyway, he's with the Coral Gables Gazettes back in those days. But this week is the big test for Shannon Dawson. So it's like back-to-back big tests, right? Shannon Dawson better do better than what Lance Guidry did this past weekend, because this is probably the most talented. I don't know if it's the best schemed up and consistent defense, but it's the most talented defense front to back that Miami's going to face. And Shannon Dawson will need to do some different things to put that defense in disarray than just running the same things over and over again that he's already run over these first, 5 or 6 games. Like, it has to look different in some respects. Same look, different pass play, different, something else out of that. Or just throw in some, some sort of new schemes, new systems that maybe you've been holding back. There might be some different formations that he hasn't used. There could be different personnel that perhaps he can get into good situations one-on-one that he likes. But he better find something, because if he does the same thing that Miami did against North Carolina, even with some success, even the same thing he did against some of these, Texas A&Ms and whatever, like, Clemson's going to be ready for that. And Miami will struggle to get to 21 points if that's what he's planning to do. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm very interested to see what Shannon Dawson dials up this coming weekend in a game that I think is a must win. You can't lose 3 in a row, 2 of them at home, and just expect fans to be like, all right, it's fine, we'll just wait until next year. Like this, to me, North Carolina was must win. This is a must win. You can't just keep losing ACC games. And I know Clemson's probably as good, or it's better than North Carolina on paper in terms of front to back personnel. Not as good, obviously, record wise, rankings wise, etc. But Clemson is a better team on paper to me in terms of the recruits they got, the NFL talent that I think is on their roster, top to bottom. So this is a major, major challenge this weekend, no matter how much Clemson struggled. And in part because Clemson has struggled, it's an even more important game for Miami to win because fans think that Miami can win this game. And Clemson's coming off a bye. Miami came off a bye and looked terrible. So where are your excuses if you lose to Clemson now? Oh, we lost to Georgia Tech, we lost to North Carolina, we lost to Clemson. But, what do you say? Where's the but? What comes after the but at that point? But
there's no but. I mean, everybody knows this is one of the tougher outs of season. Yeah.
And if they don't win this game, the next game's a must win. And then the next game's a must win. I mean, every game they have to start winning at some point. They just have to.
Yeah, to me this is 1 week at a time. But the thing that I've been a little thrown by is how angry the fan base is. And I think that Georgia Tech fiasco was quite a shock to the system of the Cane fan. And I think it's been hard to shake off, and then losing at North Carolina certainly didn't help, and but I'm just astonished by how quick people are to dismiss Tyler Van Dyke and Mario Cristobal, and listen, I mean, Mario's had a tough job here. He's obviously made a few mistakes over the time. Nobody's making excuses for the mistakes he's made before you guys on the message boards start coming after me saying I'm making apologies for Mario. I'm not making apologies for Mario. I understand the enormity of what he has had to do here. I understand the mistakes he's made, and I understand that they're kind of compounding themselves a little bit. It's like he is a CEO head coach. Lance Guidry runs the defense. Okay. At the end of the day, Mario Cristobal is responsible for the defense not being ready for what North Carolina did to them on Saturday. But he delegates that to Lance Guidry, and to me, not being ready for that, like I said, was inexcusable. That's why I'm being a little tough here on Lance Guidry today, because that just blew up the season. I mean, I'm sorry it did. Not being ready for that. And that penalty he took was inexcusable. I mean, they were going to have a 4th down play. Miami theoretically, could have been up, as much as 17 points in that game at one point. I mean, taking that penalty and them going in and scoring a touchdown when maybe you could have stopped them and held them to 0 was a huge development in that game. And so, yes, last week it was Mario that screwed up. This week it was Lance Guidry that screwed up. They have to collectively be better as a coaching staff. There is no margin for error in these games right now. They have to be on point. That's their jobs. It's not unrealistic to expect them to be on point. They are going to have to be big time on point this Saturday night when Clemson comes to Hard Rock, because everyone's saying dismissing Clemson because they lost a couple games, but this is a very good football team and very capable of putting a very good game together. And Miami's going to have to really be on point. But Matt, the one that really has me baffled is Tyler Van Dyke. And the reason that people are getting down on him is because Miami has not won with him. The seasons, I forget that season, right now I forget the record off the top of my head under Rhett Lashley. Wasn't it 7-5 that year? But I think it was 7-5. But they haven't won with Tyler Van Dyke. He's had some good games. He excelled in the Rhett Lashley offense. He's excelling in the Shannon Dawson offense this year, putting up big numbers, grading out great. The Canes fan, many of them are down on Tyler Van Dyke because he's not winning games. Is that fair in your mind?
Well, I mean, look, first, his stats are very good. He grades out at 91%. I think he had something like, he was hurried. I mean, he dropped back a million times, but I think he was hurried maybe 18 times. I'm trying to find right here. Yeah, 19 pressures when he dropped back. The offensive line did him no favors this past game. The offensive line had been so good. And we broke it down yesterday with Pro Football Focus grades. All 5 players had either their worst or their second worst grade of the year in either run blocking or pass blocking. For Jalen Rivers, it was in both. And they just really struggled to protect Tyler. I think Tyler was a warrior in there. I think part of the problem that fans have with Tyler is Miami fans aren't, they're I'm trying to think how to describe it. They're unique. They aren't like other fans. They don't want a quarterback who just looks like Daniel Jones does, because my wife's a New York Giants fan. They don't want a quarterback who, no matter what happens, terrible to the team, just doesn't look like he's upset. He just looks like no matter what happens, he's very mellow. The only time I've seen him smile on the sideline was after he literally almost had his body cut in half, and then he found out that he was going to survive. And they showed him on TV during the game, and they showed him smiling that he was actually going to survive the chop in half attempt by North Carolina. I don't ever recall him showing any emotion at all on any close-up I've ever seen on him, whether I'm in the press box looking on TV, whether Gary makes me stay at home on his little trips to other road games that I'm not going to. I've never seen him show emotion. And I think fans of Miami teams aren't used to that. And actually, it sort of disturbed me how much Miami players were celebrating in the first half of that game because, North Carolina's rushing to get back. Somebody makes a hard hit. I'm not going to name names, but you guys all know who did these things. Someone makes a hard hit and they start jumping around, and meanwhile, North Carolina's just rushing back.
They're lining up, right?
They snap the ball within 12 seconds, and they're, making their muscles and doing their whole, robot dances. They don't do robot dances.
Matt,
that's what I would do.
That's coaching. That is coaching.
Well, it is coaching, but you know what? That's also Miami's sort of thing. Like, that's why players come to Miami. Miami players want to be brash. Miami players want to say, I'm better than you, and I'm going to show you I'm better than you. And then when I show you I'm better than you, I'm going to celebrate in your face about it, which Keontre Smith literally did, which was one of the worst things I've seen mistake-wise for a senior in a long time. But by
the way, he was the villain in that play that I talked about at the Temple game.
Yeah,
he was the one that came off the bench to celebrate the Corey Couch's interception.
Yeah, I know.
This is twice in 3 weeks now. A guy that's a bit player on this team has drawn a 15-yard penalty. Obviously unacceptable.
So look, all I'm saying is this is what Miami's known for, and it's okay. I enjoy when players celebrate correctly, right? Not in the middle of the other team starting to line up or rushing back to do another snap. You end the series with a sack, fantastic. Stomp around, throw grass in the air, take off your shoes and throw them to the sideline. I don't care what you do to celebrate at that point. But there's other plays, you make a hard hit after an 8-yard gain on first down. Yeah, I wouldn't celebrate that. I would just go back and do your job at that point. It just felt like they were celebrating every little thing that they did in the first quarter, especially into the second quarter. I don't understand why. Get a touchdown, of course you celebrate. Certain things, I'm not saying don't celebrate anything, but it seemed like every little thing they celebrated like it was this amazing event. And, at one point, because I was at home and I was watching with some friends also, and I said, it's like a home run hitter hits a home run, and I get it, they all do the bat flip, but it'd be like an excessive bat flip, doing cartwheels to first base. Like, that's what it felt like. It felt like somebody who never hit a home run and hit a home run. That's what it felt like they were doing. I was like, act like you've been there a little bit. Like, I get celebrating the normal things you celebrate. But, you make a tackle for a 3-yard gain, just go to the next play. Don't start stomping around and high-fiving and, chest bumping. Like, move along. Stay focused. It just felt like there was a lack of focus. And I don't know if that's the coaching or the Miami thing, the whole swagger thing. I don't know. But I think that's why Tyler, to some extent, is vilified, because he has none of it. None of it. And Miami fans aren't used to seeing that from any position on the field. It's just this glazed over look in his eyes. He just almost looks like he just would rather be working in a bank as a teller than being a Miami Hurricane. And that's That's the truth. Like, that's what he looks like in a game. I don't think people would argue with that. I think that's part of the problem because he has not played terribly. I know fans want to say, get rid of him and he stinks and whatever. No, he's actually been pretty good. He's been pretty good. The receivers have certainly helped him this year. The receivers have been excellent. Kevin Beard deserves all the credit in the world. For the negative Nancys who say I never say anything positive, amazing year so far for the receivers. Amazing job by Kevin Beard. And I really like what Dawson's doing also. I've already said that. I really like what he's doing. This will be his big test. But so far, I really like what he's been doing in general. And I don't think Tyler's been bad. I think Tyler's been very good. Has he been great? No, but he's been very good. And very good should be enough when you're surrounded with enough talent and you have a decent defense to get some wins, to put together a 9 or 10 win season. Like, it should be enough. But you're right. You lose a game and your quarterback throws 2 interceptions, really only one that counted. And fans are ready to call for his head. But he threw some really, really good balls. He made some really good decisions. And Miami lost the game. So God forbid he's the quarterback of a team that lost the game. I did not think he played terribly. I think we gave him a B- grade or C+ grade. I mean, it wasn't good. It wasn't terrible. It was like fairly average, and for him, probably a little below average, honestly, in this game. But it was not terrible, not at all, to me.
Yeah. But we'll be talking about this more as the week goes on. But so the Canes are sitting there now at 4-2 instead of 5-1 that they would have been. And I think what everybody has to realize, that's the blip. The blip was Georgia Tech. If you're sitting at 5-1 right now at the midway point of the season, that would be a win for this program, for this team coming from where it was. It would show that there's been progress. And I think that everybody just needs to take a deep breath and keep that in perspective as we move forward. Okay. We don't know what's going to happen the second half of the year. There's a lot of tough games. This could go in either direction right now, but, I think the first half of the season, you have a football team that showed improvement over last year, and we'll be breaking all this down this week. They showed improvement over last year, and just the way that Georgia Tech game went, and the way it ended is like a little bit of a blip on the ledger that is polluting the whole environment, in my opinion. So, we'll see what happens moving forward. All right, we got a few recruiting things we're going to talk about before we go this morning. But first, let me take a minute here and talk to you a little bit about GameTime.co. And you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to the next event you want to go to. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy your tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events anywhere near you in the United States. You don't have to just be in South Florida. Game Time works everywhere. They've got an app, or you could go on their website. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat. They got these great graphics. You can see exactly what your view will be from your seat at the events, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes all of the guesswork out of buying tickets and makes it incredibly easy. And the reason for that is its founder was going to a Major League Baseball playoff game a few years back, and he ended up buying a ticket from some other online service and had the hardest time getting his tickets printed. He's down in the basement, nothing would work, and he said, I got to do something about this. So he created Game Time, and you're starting to see Game Time all over the place. They're advertising on football games on the weekends and stuff. They are on their way to becoming, I don't know if they'll ever become the same as one of the bigger competitors that but they are just as functional and just as great as anybody in this industry. So again, great deals on all tickets right up to the start of the event. Great place to find last minute seats, flash deals, best price guarantee. If you find a seat in the same section, same row as the ticket you buy with Game Time, they have 110% guarantee. They will credit you 110% of the difference. So next time you need tickets for an event, go to GameTime.co or download the Game Time app and use the code CANES, CANES, and they will give you $20 off your first ticket purchase. That's GameTime.co or the app. Use CANES as your code, and you get $20 off your first ticket purchase. That's GameTime.co, where you get the lowest price guaranteed on all your ticket purchases for all different events. So I want to talk about a few recruiting stories. But first, in honor of Matt Shodell, I think we need to do one quick thing. Woo-hoo! Celebrate, everybody, because stone crab season has begun, and that means the Festival of Happiness has erupted in Matt Shodell's household, because he'll be out on the boat mutilating these crabs like you see here and bringing them home for he and his wife to eat. What talent?
We're dropping our. We're supposed to drop our pots. We could have dropped them last week, but my buddy was out of town, so we were going to drop them yesterday. Except I'd only slept like 3 hours, and I had to do a ton of work. So we're going to go on Wednesday and put the pots in the water, and then go from there. And by the way, I was looking while you were playing that ridiculous video, which is obviously a fake video. So Miami took 15 transfers, right? And of those 15, the guys who have made an impact, a really good impact so far, consistently good: Matt Lee, Dean Mawigoa, and Javion Cohen. So, 4 of the 15, so 22% hit rate. And then behind them, I'd say Jaden Davis and Cam McCormick have been, up and down. They've helped at times and not been great at times. And that's about it. The other guys are all bench guys. So,
I hate to see them supporting your anti-transfer portal theory.
Well, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys out of 15 that have made a difference. 9 spots that could have been recruits or whatever, So, again, you need free agents. And, I get, I understand one of the guys has to sit out this year anyway, Jamil Burrows, or is going to sit out this year. But it's just not, I just want to stress to people, it's not a long-term answer. Unless you have a ton of money and you really can get free agents, just taking a transfer because he's a little bit better than the guy you have returning. To me, that's not what they should be doing. We'll talk about this more in December, I guess. But they need top young talent on this program year after year after year. They got it last year in the recruiting class. They're getting it this year in the recruiting class. They need another top recruiting class in 2024. And those 3 classes can springboard you starting next year, help springboard you into a situation where you're going to keep getting those top classes, because once Mario gets going in recruiting, he's so good at it. He's a bulldog. He won't, or I guess a pit bull won't let go. So he's a pit bull. He won't let go. He won't let up. And then it's just self-fulfilling at that point. But he's holding back his own recruiting talent by going into the transfer portal, in my opinion, and just getting guys like last year's the same thing. Whatever, I think he took 14 last year maybe, and we thought that maybe 3 or 4 of them wound up being pretty good. So, it's an issue when you have over a 2-year span double-digit roster spots that weren't really helpful other than in backup roles that could have gone to recruits that will help you in that cycle I'm talking about. That's my personal opinion on it. Obviously, Mario does it the way Mario wants to do it because he wants to win now and recruit. I get it, but that's just how I look at it.
The only thing I'll throw in there is the roster was very deficient when Mario took over, and the transfer portal has at least made it. It's helped adapt. Not everyone's not making the impact that you would have liked for them to make. No question.
Average is better than bad. You're right. Average is better than bad. You're correct about that.
It is. And before we get away from the stone crab thing, it was funny because I ran into I'm trying to remember his name. I can't, but a Canes fan who watches our show and his son were at the game up in North Carolina. And we were talking about, stone crab season was starting and that you were going to be out on your boat catching crabs and stuff. Yeah. And, they were very excited that they were going to get to hear fishing stories again on Good Morning CaneSport. So you've got a nice fan club brewing out there, Matt Shodell. All right. So we've got a ton of recruiting stuff. The latest On3 rankings came out. We break that down. Some Canes commits climb. We also have scouts takes on St. Thomas Aquinas teammates Ryan Mack. On St. Thomas Aquinas commitment, Ryan Mack, and also running back Kevin Riley, who I think is going to be a great Miami Hurricane. We've got a scout analysis on him. We've got a story on Heathwood Hall Episcopal School, 4-star cornerback Onis Konenbani. I hope I pronounced his name right, but he's caught Miami's eye, and I don't know if everybody can pronounce his name or not, but he's loving some of the things he's seeing from the Hurricanes. We'll find out where things stand there. We've got a story with Newberry High 2025 defensive lineman Jarquez Carter. He's forming a strong bond with Miami's defensive line coaches. You could see where he stands. Update with Chance Robinson from over the weekend at the St. Thomas game. Stephen Wagner was live from the crib. We've got an update on him. And then a really interesting story. Haley Cavender of the famous Cavender twins has decided she wants to play college basketball again this year, all of a sudden. And the funny thing is that she didn't just come back to Katie Meyer's team. And I'm guessing that the reason for that is, Matt, they don't have NIL money for her. Like they're tapped out, man. They're spending a lot of money on a lot of different things at the Cane Connection Collective. And Haley Cavender, she made her $100,000 last year. They probably don't have that kind of money to give her this year. John Ruiz, who did the contract with her last year, he's pretty much out of the NIL business now, other than his donation to the collective. So Haley decides she wants to play basketball again. Well, I'm assuming it's for money purposes and NIL purposes. And obviously Miami didn't just pony up, because she went to the transfer portal and she said she might come back to Miami, but she is exploring her options out there on the open market. And it's just, I got such a kick out of that one. Those girls are like, it's all about the Benjamins, man, with the Cavender twins, and they're doing a good job of generating them. That's for sure. All right, so that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. Thank you so much for starting out your day with us. You got a lot of really good stuff on the website. Hope you guys enjoy it all. If you're on YouTube and you like the show, hit your subscribe and like buttons. It helps us with the algorithms there. And if you are not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, we will have a big game special that will be launching today. And jump on over to the website, take advantage of that, and come on board and join our community of fans. And we get great pleasure every single day of doing everything that we can do to enhance your fan experience. So for Matt Shodell, who's off crabbing, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow, everybody.